Well, hello, dear friends. It is good to be here. Thank you so much for your patience with me. If someone could confirm in the chat that you can hear me okay, I will proceed. We had some technical difficulties yesterday that I think we've got worked out, and we've got two thumbs up. So, well, welcome. Welcome to the State of the Church Address, Pentecost plus one day. I'm so glad that you have joined us. I want to begin by reminding you that this is kind of one of two pieces of my somewhat audacious goal to give a State of the Church Address here. People have been asking, how are things going in the region? We're talking about a major fundraising campaign, and folks thought it would be good to know about how things are. And so I thought this would be a good day to do it. But this is one of two pieces of my State of the Church. If you were able to log in yesterday, I did my shorter, more focused on the theological and kind of spiritual and faith aspects of the state of the church. And if you were able to be there, I hope that you found that meaningful. It is on YouTube, and we'll make sure that both of our presentations are on the regional church website as well. I also want to encourage you, once again, if you haven't already, to look at our General Minister and President, Reverend Terri Hord Owens, and her State of the Church address from her vantage point as our General Minister and President, kind of looking at the larger church. She gave that presentation at the General Board meeting, and wanted it to be seen by as many people. So a lot of what she talks about, I am not going to talk about because no need to double back on that. I will say one of the reasons why I am doing this live is that I can see your questions. If you have a question or something is not clear, if you could put that into the chat. If I'm unable to deal with it adequately, I will make sure to try and get back with you. So feel free to put that in the chat. I'd love to know who's here. If you want to reveal yourself and put your name and your location, that would be wonderful as well, but not necessary at all. So even though this presentation is focused more on data and facts and details, I do want to begin with a theological statement that I have said before and will say again and again. No matter what you might be feeling about the church right now, there is good news, and the good news is God is in charge. Thank God that we were not put in charge of the ultimate reasons for our faith and for the church, our ultimate destiny for those, but God is in charge. And I will say it, and I hope you agree with me. Faith in God and faith in Jesus Christ is alive and well in our day. It just is not always lived out by the people or the places we expect, or lived out in the ways that are familiar to us. I think one of the reasons why many in our churches are anxious is because they're only around people like themselves and only in places that are familiar. But I think if we go out into the world, you would see that that there's a live faith in Jesus is alive and well. It's just got some wondrous ways of being in the world. And the same thing for the church. The church has existed for 2,000 years plus. It is the very body of Christ, and it will exist as long as God needs it to. No matter what we do to make it wonderful or to mess things up. It will just be expressed in forms that we cannot even yet imagine. I keep saying I'd love to be a midwife to what the new church of the future is going to be, but I think at this point, my job is just to make sure that this transition happens with some sense of faithfulness. All of this good news is exciting and very humbling. So without further ado, let's move on. this first section is about being honest. And you see there a quote from Fred Rogers. Most of us know him as Mr. Rogers. And he's attributed with saying, whatever is mentionable is manageable. And I think he lived that in his show and his life. So let's mention the hard truths so that they will be more manageable. So we're going to begin with a little bit of kind of honesty. And I want to say that some of the things I'm going to share with you that sound pretty dour are not universal. At the end of this presentation, in fact, I'm going to share with you some exceptions to the rule. But let's first start with some honest data and details. The state of our congregation. The primary reason for the existence of the regional church and the general church is to help our local congregations and whatever kinds of other faith communities there are make real the gospel of Jesus Christ to individuals, families, and communities in their contexts. There are a whole lot more things that we do, and I'm going to actually tell a little bit about the unique aspects of a regional church. But really, at the end of the day, our primary focus, our primary job is to help our local congregations live into the call from Christ, because really, you all are where the rubber meets the road. You all are in the midst of the people. I sometimes am, but I come and go. You really are there. So my job is to support you. So if we're going to be honest, let's begin with a honest assessment of our congregations. So if you haven't been introduced to my friend Alex, I hope that you will become good friends with them. Alex is a fantastic database and program software that our general minister and president has integrated, and it gathers data about our congregations and about our membership and about our giving patterns. But what's different from this than our printed yearbooks is that it makes this data accessible and searchable and therefore researchable, meaning we can figure out patterns and project possibilities for the future. We could do that for the Christian church in Ohio and for the entire denomination. This illustrates the critical importance of congregations filling out their annual yearbook reports. We do still call them yearbook reports, and entering their weekly attendance in the system as best that you can. And it's not because I want to get my nose in your business. It's really so that we can do what I'm doing right now, and that is have real data upon which to make wise decisions. And everything I'm going to say in the next few minutes is because people took the time to put their information into our Alex database. So let's look at some of those statistics. Now, Reverend Owens in her State of the Church does a much better deep dive on this denominationally, but I thought I would do just some quick things that I think you might find interesting. Looking at our 2023 yearbook reports, for those reporting, well, there was 2,887 congregations listed. You know, I still remember when I was a teenager, we would talk about 2.5 million members and over 4,000, almost 5,000 congregations. It's a very different world. 57% of those congregations reported for 2023. The Christian Church in Ohio did better than that, but wait for that. You might be interested to know a little bit about average worship attendance. The largest number of congregations have worshiping attendance between 1 and 50 people. I think our illusion is that those are small congregations. Those are the average. I think the very average is 40 people in worship is the average size. So that really changes our perspective, I think, from our childhoods, where many of our congregations were just packed. 30% of our congregations worship between 51 and 150, 4% between 151 and 350, and 1% are more than 351. And so we do have a few mega congregations, you might say. Ohio actually has one of those. But most of our congregations are between 1 and 50 in worship. The age of our congregations, now this isn't the age of the people in the pews, but the age of the actual congregation when they were founded, if we know that. 45%, the vast majority of our congregations are between 75 and 150 years. And so you can put your congregation into that kind of median. And then just a quick look at clergy. Clergy withstanding, there are 5,883 active clergy, and 3,717 of us are not retired. All are wonderful and all are cared for. So that's just kind of a quick snapshot of our denomination. But let's look at the Christian church in Ohio. Here's some helpful pieces of data that for you to know where we are today. And again, these are only from people who reported, only from congregations to reported. So let's start with the median worship attendance. That's that first number. So in 2020, we were reporting an average of 48 people in worship regularly over the year. That has dropped a little bit. Actually, this was surprising to me because it seems to have dropped less than 45 members are people are in attendance on an average Sunday in 2023. So we're still above the average, I think, for the whole denomination. That's very, very good news. And then when you're looking at participating members, and every congregation gets to decide how they want to name what is a participating member, you'll see that in 2020, we were naming about 185, 186 as our participating members. Oftentimes, that's people who are worshiping or giving money or attend some kind of event during the year or something like that, or pledge. But in 2023, that did drop to about 163. So there's about a 20-person drop in those 4 years. But the biggest drop is in naming our membership. In 2020, in Ohio, in our congregations, we were naming about 237, 238 people as our total membership. And that in 2023 dropped down to 187. Whoops, you all can't see that. Sorry about that. I've got to figure out how to do that. Anyway, the average membership, the last number there is 187.4. So there is a pretty significant drop. Now, there may be many factors. We might be more honest than we were in the past about our full membership, or in fact, that might be a very real number that we have dropped. Now, let's look at this wonderful thing that Dean Phelps, who's in charge of Alex, has helped us look at, and that is connected congregations. So these are congregations that reported to the yearbook and Alex. In 2020, we had 151 congregations total. And in 2023, that has dropped to 139. I'm going to give a little more detail on that in just a minute. So there has been a drop of congregations that have closed or left the denomination. It includes both. I'm going to skip over to the last category. And again, I apologize that you're not able to see those last numbers. I'll try to read those to you. Reported, obviously, are those congregations that have filled out a yearbook report. And in 2020, 88 of our congregations filled out a yearbook report. That went up to 92 in 2021. It dropped down to 70 in 2022. But in 2023, we had 90 congregations fill out their yearbook reports. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You help make my job better. But I really want to focus on that middle category, which is connected congregations. And those are congregations that have either completed a yearbook report and or given to some disciples' offering. So it could be either or both. Hopefully, we have more and more of our congregations doing both. And by special offerings, you know them, the Easter, Pentecost, Thanksgiving, Christmas, but also, let's see, I'm not sure if Week of Compassion and Reconciliation are included in that. I would have to find out that. But anyway, congregations that gave. So it went in 2020 from 114 down to 2023 to 101. So for those of you who can't see those numbers, it's 114, 116, 109, and 101. So definitely a bit of a drop. But I want to tell you a little bit about what has happened since I was called to be your regional minister in April of 2021. We have had 8 congregations cease their regular and visible ministry and close completely as a congregation. And I will say one more has voted and will close this summer. This is not easy for me, but I will tell you that my job, I think, in this moment in history is to not question these congregations and their leaders. I obviously try to help them think about other options, but to really help those who are absolutely certain to be faithful in the way that they conclude their ministries. 3 congregations have or will have vote to sell their historic congregation, their buildings, but they'll continue as a congregation. So those congregations are meeting in homes, or they found another location to meet, or some other kind of creative thing. But that has been part of the equation. 8 congregations have chosen to leave the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and one more has voted to do so, but that has not been finalized. Those are especially painful to me because I so believe in the big picture of our denomination. I believe that because we believe that Jesus is Christ, the Son of the living God, and accept Christ and proclaim Christ as Lord and Savior as our only firm tenet of belief, that we ought to be able to disagree and talk more about those others. My sermon yesterday talked a whole lot about that. But I can't stop a congregation from leaving, and they leave for a whole host of reasons. Some because they don't believe in regions, or some because they don't believe in the denomination. Sometimes they leave because of something I've said, or the general minister and president has said, or some general ministry vote that has happened. Anyway, now let's turn to our lay leaders. This is where I try to put a lot of my heart and soul in supporting our lay leaders, because I believe they are just so incredibly important to us. And I have witnessed some deep and abiding faithfulness in Jesus Christ and profound dedication to the church in lay leaders in our churches. And many have really managed through all the difficulties in the past few years with grace and truth and beauty and a lot of hard work. So thank you, all our lay leaders. So let's talk a little bit about the state of our lay leaders. Acknowledging the faithfulness and the dedication, I think it's fair to say our memberships are declining, and thus there are fewer people available for leadership. Frequently, I will be talking to a congregation about who is a leader, or we'll go around the circle and I ask them to tell me their leadership roles, and they laugh at me because almost all of them have had several, if not all, of the major leadership roles. And we're at a point in history where either they are just rotating them around. And so this year I'm the chair of the elders, and next year I'm the chair of the board, or they are just staying in their positions, which is beautiful in the sense that they know what they're doing, but also, we all want a bit of a break. Our membership is growing older, therefore our leadership is growing older. And I want to point out what this means is there's less mentoring happening. I don't think we always take into account that in the church, the church is oftentimes in some communities the best place for leadership development to happen, where people of all walks of life, it doesn't matter if you are a janitor's son or the child of a major executive, at Rubbermaid or wherever, you can have leadership possibilities. That's where I gained my leadership skills, was in church. And as the membership grows older, less and less mentoring is happening. And that's hard for the mentors, the older folks, as well as for the young folks who aren't getting the mentoring. I've already kind of mentioned that leadership roles are rotating. And we're not taking into account, or at least I'm not naming enough, the result in exhaustion, the lack of creativity, and maybe even the resentment that builds, that you have to just keep doing the work to keep the church going. So let's just be honest about that. And I've also noticed a lot of anxiety about the fact that adherence to governing documents is strained. Sometimes congregations are forcing themselves to make sure that they have 8 elders because that's what the Constitution and bylaw says, or they're not doing that and they feel terribly guilty about it. So I want to offer a gift to our lay leaders. I want good governance and I want best practices. So I'm not trying to say be, um, uh, easy or quick about this, but I would assure our lay leaders that and our clergy that they are recognized and appreciated, and I would hope that they would worry less about fulfilling the requirements of their governing documents and focus more about helping the church nurture their and other spiritual lives and deepen their faith. For me, it is less about having 12 deacons and more about is our congregation reaching out to those in need? Many of our small congregations are getting this, but I just want to give you permission. And if you need to officially set aside your constitution and bylaws, or if you need help from the region to rewrite them so that they're more right-sized, we're glad to help with that too. I see several people have logged in. It's good to have folks from Washington Avenue Christian Church and First Christian Wauseon and North Eaton Christian Church, as well as First Christian Wilmington. And let's talk a little bit about the state of our clergy. Here's just some quick pictures from the last few months of the diversity of our clergy. We're got some amazing leaders commissioned as well as ordained, and it's my privilege to work alongside of you all. Our clergy are faithful and creative. They're persistent, dedicated, and well aware of what's going on in the world. But much like our lay leaders, they are frustrated, frazzled, exhausted, overextended. But I would also say that our clergy are also feeling especially embattled, meaning they're kind of not under attack, but they're focused on, put on the spot, that there's pressure. You're the person in charge. You should be turning this church around. We pay you. You should be doing more for evangelism. There's just a lot of that, even though, of course, we all know, and especially in the Christian church, that we share in this. And when you're tired and exhausted, you're not so inspired. Many are questioning their place in the church. And one of the hardest things I have to tell you all, you may know this already, but many clergy are leaving congregational ministry for chaplaincy or for nonprofit or other roles. And some are leaving the church entirely, questioning their faithfulness. And so that breaks my heart, because I just hate the thought of someone who felt called to ministry to now feel like that this isn't the place for them because of all that they've experienced. And as I've said before, COVID did not destroy the church, did not cause all these problems, but boy, did it pull the cover back, and we had to see what was happening. And I think a lot of clergy were put on the spot. I don't know about you, but I'd never used Zoom before in my life. Maybe Skype, maybe FaceTime, but certainly not Zoom. I had to learn in a week, like many of us did, and figure out technology that I still obviously haven't figured out well. But I see we've got someone from Christian Temple in Lorraine. Good to have you with us too. So the nexus of what's happening with our lay people and what is happening with our clergy comes to a head in pastoral transition. And this, of course, is one of the places where regions are supposed to be the most help. I try to be the most help. And this intersection is in search and call. When I arrived, there were 26 congregations actively in search and call. Some of those had been there for a little bit because of the transitions happening in the regional church. At the height, since I've been here over the last 3+ years, we've had 28 at one time in search and call. Currently, we're at our lowest. There are 8, but some of those have been there for years, and they are in settings that are just very hard to find clergy for. The process is taking longer. There are fewer candidates available, and matches are harder. And I'm going to say just a little bit about that. We've been talking with our seminaries and divinity houses about what's happening. And we all are aware because they are struggling too, because their numbers are down. And they too had to pivot pretty quickly, except for institutions like Lexington Theological Seminary that was already there. Um, in regards to virtual learning. But what Reverend Dr. Charisse Gillette from Lexington said to us when the College of Regional Ministers was asking her, she said, well, you need to go back in that chain of that supply chain, if you want to use that language, and ask how many of our congregations are sending people into ministry, whether it's young people or second career people, because really the local congregation is where people are inspired and empowered to go into ministry. And so and we all have to say, it's been a while since we had a Timothy or a Priscilla go into ministry. We're trying to inspire and encourage those folks in our camp and conference program and through the Commission on Ministry. But we need to think of new ways, because really you can't have clergy at the end to put into places of ministry if they aren't going into either commission ministry or ordained ministry. We are doing some creative things like the Lay Preaching Academy to try and help our lay people, at least when you step up to have to take care of some of the things in worship, like preaching and leading communion, that you're prepared to do that. I will say that because of the fewer candidates and the matches are harder, my search committees get very angry with me. They think I'm hiding. I'm holding back on candidates. My commitment has always been, and it's my ethical obligation, to present every candidate that wants to have their name put before your church. I will present that name and profile to you. And if you ask me for someone, I will go out and ask them if they want. So I'm not holding back. We just have very few, and this is across all denominations and all regions. And then I'll also mention that the number and availability of trained interim ministers is an all-time low. And so we're having to rethink the model. You know, we used to say an interim minister absolutely could never be the settled pastor. And there's a good reason for that. I won't go into that here, but I've got my spiel. There's very good reason, because interim work is hard work, and you usually don't make friends if you do your interim work well. But we have to acknowledge that in some settings where it's not so unhealthy or so conflict-ridden, or they're not dealing with such grief, that if we found a good match in that interim, it might be the best match for the settled pastor. I installed 4 pastors last fall who started as interims and then became the settled pastor. And quite frankly, they're all working pretty darn good. We're also starting to think about having interim ministry consultants that go in and help just on some of the interim ministry pieces, but who may not have the time or the interest in doing a full interim with all the preaching and pastoral care and so forth. So I've got to pull out clergy salary and compensation, because this is a place where there is a lot of conflict. And my congregations are acknowledging that receipts are down, offerings are down, they have less money to give, and yet it feels like clergy who are in search and call are asking for more and more, because we are coming to a healthy rebalance of work, rest, home, and being compensated fairly. There's a renewed focus on self-care and family and community connections. And it's really hard for our congregations to kind of get that. You know, if I'm learning that many clergy in search and call, if they see that there's no time off for and money available for clergy conferences and renewal, or there's no sabbatical leave, they don't even look any farther in the profile, because they automatically interpret that as the congregation doesn't get what it means in this day and age to be a pastor and be just so exhausted. Healthy boundaries are being maintained that are hard for long-time dedicated and overextended lay leaders to understand. I was with a search committee this last year, and I started talking about quiet quitting. You may have heard that phrase where pastors as well as workers, whether it's at the coffee shop or the steel plant, when that 5 o'clock bell rings, they're done. And clergy are starting to say, I am not going to stay until the last person leaves to make sure that the doors are locked, because that is not in my job description, and someone else can do that just as well, maybe better than I. And as I was telling this group of lay leaders who were just as dear as could be, you could see the shock in their eyes, because they had just told me that they get there early. They do everything. They do the lawn mowing. They wash the dishes. They do all this. And then for me to say that clergy are kind of naming their boundaries, well, what needs to happen is all of us need to find healthy boundaries. And I think we will also find a sense of renewal and sense of comfort in that. So I yearn for our lay people to get that as well. I've asked a friend of mine, Reverend Kate Penny Howard, she did a blog post called "A Letter to a Search Committee from a Pastor," and it had some of these things in it that I thought were very, very helpful. So I have asked her if I had permission to share that with search committees, and I do. And she kind of goes through some of these things in a very non-judgmental vantage point, saying, you need to think about these things, because it is how clergy feel. We all want to be honored for the work that we do. We all want to be able to pay our bills. And I didn't put it in the PowerPoint, but a lot of my congregations say they want younger clergy with families. I happen to think all clergy can be gifted and graced and be right for a congregation, but we understand this happens. So I say, if that's what you're focused on, you've got to up your salary, because they probably have student loan debts that they have to pay. If they have a family, they have to pay for their children's education, and that happens even in high school and elementary school. Also, I say, if you're in a community that there's not a place, if they have a spouse, for the spouse to get viable work, you need to take that into account. So there's lots of factors. I'm trying to help our congregations understand the situation with clergy salary and compensation. And also, many of our congregations are moving from full-time to part-time. And what I mean by that is full-time to part-time salary and compensation. And I have to work to help them get a mindset that moves from full-time to part-time ministry, because you can't expect the pastor to be at every single meeting if you're only paying them for half of the time there. So let's keep moving. So that's kind of a quick look at the state of the church in numbers and kind of details. I want to talk a little bit specifically about the Christian church in Ohio and a region. I did a sermon a few years ago called "What Good is a Region?" I think it was technically called "Are We the Muddle in the Middle?" Out of that sermon, I came up with about 5 things in regional ministry that I think are very unique, why we exist, at least in the Christian church Disciples of Christ. This doesn't cover it all, but I think this gives you an idea of some of the unique facets of a region and a regional ministry and a regional minister that neither the local congregation nor the denomination can do. For example, we are the link. We are the link between the local church and the general church, and the general church and the local church. So when I go to general board, I have all my congregations in my little brain talking to me and saying, oh, that idea is not such a good idea if you think about it from a local church standpoint. Or I get to say, wow, one of my churches is doing this amazing thing in this area. Let me tell you about it. And in the same way, when I go into our local churches, I connect the general church and all of our amazing general ministry partners, as well as the ecumenical and interfaith world. So when I am in First Christian Church of Everytown, Ohio, I'm able to say, oh, wow, did you know that the National Benevolent Association has some grants that might help you reach out to the senior citizens in your community? Let's talk about that. So I'm the linkage between the other aspects of church. Also, the region pastors the congregation and clergy and the relationship between them. I have to thank Dick Ham, former general minister and president, for reminding me, because people frequently say, "Oh, Alan, you're a regional minister. That means you're a pastor to the pastors." And he reminded me, well, that's true, but I'm also a pastor to the congregations. And sometimes I have to be a pastor to the relationship between them if something needs to happen or there's some conflict. So it's not simply a mediator, but I am someone who loves both clergy and lay people and want them to get along as best as possible. Also, a region ensures a trained, healthy, and consistent order of ministry. I've got some congregations that are talking about going to Indeed.com to get new ministers. And I say, well, I'd prefer you not. Let's talk about what I do that helps make sure that you get good quality clergy. Maybe I'm not giving you enough of them, but I can assure you the ones I give you, we know, we're connected to. So that is one of the things. And then we also try to train clergy, do continuing education, spiritual events. We had an amazing spiritual life retreat with our clergy with the UCC and disciples in January. We brought in singer-songwriter Carrie Newcomer. I don't think that could have happened if just one congregation decided to do that. But because we join all of us together, we can help our clergy and our lay people be better at what they do. And of course, this is not the case for every region these days, but we do still own and operate facilities and develop programs for camps, conferences, and retreats. And you'll see in just a moment, our major fundraising campaign is going to focus on that a bit more. And when we are at our best and we have time to do it, I think regions observe and convey trends, new wisdom, and best practices. I try to do some of that in the midst of our clergy conversation calls and in other ways. So let me tell you some of my foci, and I'm going to run through these fairly quick. I've really worked hard to restore pastoral care and confidence throughout our region with everybody. Working with our wonderful regional elders, I put a priority on the ministry of presence, meaning showing up. I had to get a new car because I wore the old car out, showing up. We do pastoral care calls, and I try to send cards to clergy and lay leaders when they have the loss of a close loved one. I try to have honest and hard conversations. I do a whole lot of listening in our congregations. I like to celebrate. I love to celebrate our leaders and our congregations, noting special occasions and anniversaries. And I try to share my pictures, all those selfies and things I take on social media, not because I love my face. In fact, I don't very much at all, but I do love to show off my people, my congregations. I love to show you off to the world, and it helps you connect with one another. Working with, and then I'm in charge of setting and living the vision. That's kind of what I'm doing here. I work with the staff, the executive committee, the regional church council on vision, mission, and values. Let me just check over here. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, showing up is a big deal. It's hard, it's exhausting, but it's important. I also set the vision by preaching and doing proclamation. I put a lot into yesterday's sermon specifically to try and help set the vision ahead of where we are. My monthly newsletter articles, blog posts, social media videos. Every now and then I get pushback because I'm setting a vision a little farther ahead than many of us are. But I think that's what my job is too. I follow trends. I do a lot of reading, learning, and I change my own way of viewing the world by what I learn. Wonderful conversations with many of you. I grow and I learn best practices, and then I try to share them. Again, our clergy conversation calls on a monthly basis are a place to do some of that. And I try to listen to and nurture our most marginalized and youngest members and leaders. Since I mentioned staff up there at the top, I did want to say many people have asked about Jenny Stoddard Bernard, who is our regional administrator. You know that she has been dealing with cancer for the last year and a half, 2 years. And I said, Jenny, what would you like for people to know about you at this moment regarding your health? And she said, quote, I'm still working through a lot of the unexpected long-term side effects, but my doctors say that I am in remission and that I am doing great. So those are words directly from Jenny. Praise God for that good report. I do a lot to try and keep our focus on pro-reconciliation and anti-racism. That was set as a priority for our denomination, and it's a priority for our region. I support the PRAR Commission and our co-chairs, the Reverend Dr. Alicia Evans Hayes and Pastor Jeff Wilder. I try to integrate my pro-reconciliation, anti-racism, and confronting white supremacy and white Christian nationalism into my sermons, social media posts, newsletter articles, when I greet congregations and in worship. I have a deep commitment to ensuring that our governing and programming bodies are more and more fully representative of our congregations and membership. And I work diligently to ensure Camp Christian, which has historically been a place where a lot of people, but not all people, feel welcome, make sure it is safer and more nurturing for all people, including our BIPOC and people of color. And there's always more to be done. And I listen to Black and brown voices so that I know more what I need to be doing in that regard. Shared leadership. I'm big on shared leadership. I try to have a collegial model for leadership. Work with our regional church council, our commissions, teams, committees, make sure that they're fully peopled, they're trained and equipped to do their work. And then I try to step back and let them do their work. Every week we have staff meetings where I listen and learn as much as I direct and lead. And weekly meetings with Reverend, I don't know what that meant. Okay, we'll figure that one out. And I'm working to build new teams and committees that have been dormant for quite a while, and ensuring the highest quality and most diverse representatives are on those teams. The two most recent are the Congregational Renewal Team under the leadership of Reverend Michael Dorr, and the Regional Visioning Committee under the leadership of Reverend Betty Sivis. And both of those teams are already at work and doing some great things. And I'm trying to emphasize transparency and modeling vulnerability in every setting I go. A lot of what people are concerned about is financial health and transparency. I did a full presentation that was part of the major fundraising campaign feasibility study. It is on our website. That link, you can always email the regional church office and we can send you a copy of it. But it goes through many, many, many different things that have been done in the past 4 or 5 years to try and regain our trust across the life of the regional church regarding finances. All of our regional church and Camp Christian budgets and monthly financial reports from Treasury Services are on our website. I would dare you to find another regional church or middle judicatory that puts every single one of their monthly financial reports online. Anyone can see them. That's transparency if I've ever heard of it. Every single financial transaction is reviewed by both our Finance Committee and Treasury Services. Literally, our Finance Committee and Treasury Services go through every check written, every reimbursement made, every bill paid. They look over my credit card and ask, Alan, why did you spend $300 buying bonbons at Mally's Chocolates? And I have to say that is what was requested of me by my clergy. No, I don't say that. Anyway, you get the picture. We ended 2023 in the black for the regional operating budget, as we have every year since I've been here. But finally, Camp Christian was within $2,000 of being balanced. And when you're talking about a multi-$100,000 budget, $2,000 is pretty darn good. So Camp Christian's transition and stability. We've had 3 very good years under the leadership of Tom Bowerman Jett as campsite manager and Bruce Bowerman Jett as food service director. He did a lot more than just food service. And they have been great years. I've had a very stable and wonderful staff. But Bruce has been called to a pastoral position in Florida, and he and Tom's last day in their positions will be June 23rd. I want to assure you the executive committee has determined a plan that has yet to be finalized, but it is all figured out, that will involve hiring interim managers to carry us through the remainder of summer and hopefully through the Labor Day weekend with disciple retreats, disciple fellowship retreat. And then we're going to, and also we've got 2 experienced lead camp staffers who are stepping up in their roles. And that will give the leaders, the regional church leadership, the chance to determine what is needed for the long term. So we're working on that. And then you all recall last year we made a big deal about trying to be smart about whether or not the Christian church in Ohio was ready for a major fundraising campaign. And we had a feasibility study. And it was determined that there was a capacity for a major fundraising campaign in the Christian church in Ohio to raise between 1.9 and 2.8 million. And a case was made for us to raise $2.5 million. In November, the Regional Church Council voted to move forward with a major fundraising campaign. This winter and spring, a chairperson for the core committee was called. That's the Reverend Roger McKinney. And a campaign coordinator was selected, Reverend Jim Bain, and a core committee was selected. We have some of the finest leaders who know both the regional church and camp, because this campaign is really about both. It's not just about the camp, it's about both. And so we've got some well-respected leaders in charge. At the April 27th Regional Church Council, it was agreed to move forward with the campaign to hire Reverend Bain as our coordinator, campaign coordinator, and engage Disciples Church Extension Fund to help run the campaign. And that second decision was primarily because Jenny and I are just completely overwhelmed, and we just couldn't add any more details to our portfolio. We're calling it the If Not Now When campaign because that was the single most repeated line in the feasibility study. You know, the world is kind of crazy right now, but if not now, when? It's being formulated. You'll see it rolled out in several stages over the next few weeks and months. There's going to be a silent phase, like most big campaigns are, where major donors are secured, and then a public phase where everybody can participate. But if you are one of those people who is eager to give us money for this financial campaign, you can do it. You heard it here first. You won't get any Ginsu cutting knives as a gift, but you'll get our love and appreciation. There's already a drop-down donation option available on the regional church website. All you have to do is go to the little button that says donate. And amongst other options, you can pick the campaign. We do hope that you will consider being a recurring giver and give over the 3 years of the campaign or more. Here's what the campaign will raise money for. We'll do more of this in a pitch later. So I just want to give you the quick. A full-time program staff person, because we need to transform the 10 weeks of our beloved summer camp, more than we're already doing, to a year-round regional ministry center that is for the whole church and more, for the community, for businesses, for families. And so we need someone who can market it, someone who can do the reservations, and also someone who can think about programming for that big entity, the regional ministry center. It also will have several part-time regional church office staff. Those haven't been finalized, but almost certainly one will be a bookkeeper to help take some of the load off of Jenny as regional administrator, and probably one person that will help with search and call. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of correspondence that needs to happen that's not being done very well right now. So those are two, hopefully some more. Capital improvements, mainly to make the camp accessible for persons. Right now, if you're in a wheelchair or if you have some sight impairments, it's really, really not a welcoming place. And then finally, and I know this is the big item, and that is a pool. It will be an accessible pool. There will be a bathhouse with it because that's required by health code. We believe that the pool will make our regional ministry center far more attractive to our own people as well as to others, that it will quickly pay for itself, because when we talk to families about where their kids are going for summer camp, almost all of them talk about, well, they at least want to go to a place where there's a pool. I know it's the big ticket item, but I think it is going to prove to be well worth it in the long run. And let's end on a word of hope. One of my mottos has been, every day is a new chance for resurrection. And I truly believe that. And today is the day for resurrection. Today might not be Easter Sunday, but today is a day for resurrection. So I'm just going to give you some quick stories of innovation and creativity that I think signal hope. On the left is Jackson Christian Church down in Jackson. They have a bluegrass group. This is only a couple of the members of it that regularly provide music in worship. And that captures the spirit of their community. That's one of the things about innovation and creativity, is recognizing the people that you're serving. Go watch them on Facebook. It's marvelous group. On the right, you'll see members of our International Affairs Seminar. And we've done this before, so you might say that's not very innovative, except that this year we did it entirely with the United Church of Christ Heartland Conference. And I will tell you, it was 8 exhausting days. I was on it this year, but I have never been so excited about the future of our youth and young people than watching them interact with people at the United Nations or with their representatives in Congress. It was phenomenal. And we did it jointly with the United Church of Christ. On the left, you see the renewed worship space for Disciples Christian Church in Cleveland Heights. They took a bold move and completely renovated their beautiful Georgian sanctuary because they want to be an arts center for the community, and they are. And one of the things that they promised themselves when they did this under the leadership of Reverend Jason Brickner Thompson is that they would provide free art space for youth and youth programming in their communities. It's absolutely wonderful. So it's worship space. I even heard they had a circus in that space. Can you believe it? On the right, you see Fifth Christian Church. They have chosen the last 2 years to have a freedom school. You may know freedom schools are out of the Children's Defense Fund and Marion Wright Edelman, and they are these kind of dynamic places for children in the neighborhood, particularly African American and Hispanic neighborhoods, where they have something that is not just safe, but creative and vibrant for them to do during the summer. On the left, you see Reverend Nathan Russell. He's receiving an award there from the Lorain County Urban League. But I lift him up because Washington Avenue Christian Church, amongst the, lots of other creative things they're doing, they chose to dig deep into medical debt and raise money that is leveraged to pay for medical debt for people who probably never could pay for that debt in their lifetimes and are burdened by that. I also know Community Christian Church in North Canton did the same thing. What a great thing for a church to do. On the right, that's not a local church, that's at camp. But we decided to expand our Healthy Boundaries training for clergy to include training for domestic violence and intimate partner abuse prevention and awareness. And you see there Reverend Dr. Betty Miller Green, who is doing part of that presentation. We're hoping to expand more of our trainings for lay people and for clergy. On the right, you see a picture of Compass Christian Church down in Mason. They took the covenant curriculum that the general minister and president created a few years ago, and they made a sermon series and put tables in their worship space so that after they saw the presentation, they could talk about in small group during worship. They kind of rethought what worship was. On the right, you see the leaders of our elder deacon retreat. We made sure that we had leadership from a variety of congregations, and you see I won't go into details, but several people from Central Christian Church of Newark, several leaders from Bethany Christian Church in Cleveland. We are almost to the end, folks. Hold on, take a deep breath. Finally, I want to end with something I learned more about yesterday, and that is Woodland Christian Church is part of the Coalition for Racial Reconciliation. Maybe you can see there that listing of about 6 or 7 churches there. They're of different races and different ethnicities and different neighborhoods, and they've decided to come together and do the deep work of racial justice work. They do anti-racism training every year. They have preaching engagements on Martin Luther King Jr. weekend and Juneteenth. And then they do community events like this community health fair. The Reverend Dr. Eric Brown is a senior pastor there. Okay, my final Pentecost priorities. I'm going to spend, this was in my newsletter, I'm going to spend the next season of Pentecost sharing some of the learnings I have. Some of those will be the practical tidbits that many of us want to hear about how to turn our church around, how to do evangelism. I solicit your ideas. You'll see when they start coming out. They'll be on Facebook, Threads, and Instagram, and I'm calling them my Pentecost pointers. Just a little way to share some of the wisdom I've gleaned over the years. We are going to establish a new ministries team to guide our efforts. That's the last kind of big team I need to put into place, and it will help us to nurture our current new ministries, as well as help us to think about new ones. And part of that will be sending this team to the 2024 Leadership Academy, designed by the amazing Jose Martinez, Reverend Dr. Jose Martinez, who is our new ministry strategist and leader. It's going to be October 22nd to October 25th down in Gainesville, Florida. And that will help then launch our new ministries efforts here in the Christian Church in Ohio. I hope by the next time I do one of these, we will be talking about brand new congregations or faith communities in new shapes and forms that we can celebrate. We can only do it through the Pentecost offering. If you haven't given to the Pentecost offering, please do. That is what will help fund our new church ministries. I need you to give. I give. 50% comes back to our region. 50% goes to Jose's office and the denomination to do the good work they do. So please promote the Pentecost offering along with the other offerings, but this one is especially important for the vision of the Christian Church in Ohio. Okay, there's information on how to contact me and some of our social media things. Let me look and see. If you have any questions, now's the time to put them into the chat. You can always email me if you have specific questions, but I will try to respond as best I can. So anyway, thank you. This was obviously longer than I anticipated, but it's the best I could do. You all are very kind. So we ask God's blessings, not on this, but on you, on me, on us, that whatever we do, that it will be God's will and God's way and God's hope and God's dream for us to do. This is important work, my friends, and I'm glad we are doing this work together. So God's blessings be with you. I wish you all the best and take care.